hear our battle with another episode of The Teen Scene. Please don't go away. We'll be right back.
I'd like to introduce Brigadier General Wilma Albott is with us. I'd like to introduce Mary Cleve, who works with our Maryland Women's Heritage Center, who's featured on our display up here. Mary was a NASA astronaut. Are there any other women that are featured in the display up here, or women of Goddard that are with us today? Okay. Last but not least, I'd like to welcome all of the World War II veterans and women on the home front.
This is Elaine Harmon, and Elaine served in the WASP in World War II.
I'm just impressed with this program, although I can't hear a word anybody says. I'm confused. It's nice to know that the young generation still appreciates what everybody did their part during World War II.
I'm Susan King, and last night I was told that I would represent our chapter of Rosa Derivative. We are a chapter. We're not growing because we get one day we'll look around and we have really shrunk. We looked all around in my travels with the Rosa Derivative, the national chapter. We looked around for the scarcity, and we found out that I am the scarcity because we haven't been able to find any Afro-Americans who would admit to being as old maybe as I am.
I'd like to introduce Betty Prince Sims. She goes by Princey, I understand. She served in the Marines.
They had a big meeting of all World War veterans, World War II veterans. And so it was very interesting. I sat there in my shirt, like this, I don't know what they told me to sit. And everybody kept passing out everything except giving me anything. And I thought, what am I, chopped liver? I was sitting by men, and I guess they thought I was a wife or something. And finally I said to one lady, would you please give me the material that you're handing out because I am a veteran.
Thank you. Okay, we have Edith Esslinger with us, who is an Army nurse from World War II.
Fortunate for me to be living my 93rd year
And meeting people like Linda Lindsay, and learning of the accomplishments of Maryland Women's Heritage Society. I was the result of my father's 5th attack for a boy. He died of a heart attack at 69 in March of 42, and I know he would have been approved of my joining the Army in August 1942.
Diane Sumner with us from the Waves.
1939, I was up in the French Alps climbing, late September, when Hitler went into Poland. And the first mobilization started in France. And because I was fluent in French and I was alone, I was 15, I got myself to Paris with my son.
Daredevil then, weren't you?
Oh! I really wanted to jump out. Never happened. They were prepared them too well. And at the I married a man on the base from San Francisco. I stayed in California. I had 4 children. And that's the story of my life.
All right, welcome back to the Teen Show. Today, we want to welcome Rachel and get her wonderful experience she had today. Rachel, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great.
Good.
So tell me about your experience.
It was absolutely wonderful to see all these lovely women and their experiences. I've never, as a young person, thought about it, and they're all amazing people, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Do you have any personal advice to our audience from what you've learned today?
I think I would just tell younger people that it's really important to, take time and understand people that have gone through so much and it's a really good learning experience.
And who is your favorite today?
I would have to say Miss Greta.
Miss Greta?
The whole kissing soldier thing was really awesome, and I've seen it before and I didn't actually think it was real, so it was really incredible to know that that actually happened. Miss Greta was a nurse at the time, and she was kissed by a soldier, and someone from Life magazine took a picture of it, and it's known in history, and it's just a really famous picture. It's incredible because I didn't even think it was real, so it's really cool to see.
So Rachel, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm a pretty laid-back person. I'm really into baseball and softball, so I have a really athletic background.
Well, I guess Title IX means a lot to you then, right?
Absolutely. If this didn't get passed, I think that I wouldn't have the experiences that I'm lucky to have in athletics. So, I think sometimes people take that kind of thing for granted, and I think that it's important to know that, we need to appreciate the freedoms we have in athletics.
So, what do you think you want to be when you grow up?
Well, I'm interested in nursing and psychology, so maybe a nurse, maybe a psychologist somehow. There were definitely some nurses here today, so it was really cool to meet them and hear their story.
Any last thoughts for our teens out there?
I would just say take some time in your day and to think about people who, are such amazing, inspirations, and just to think about it.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for being with us today. I'm glad you enjoyed your experience, and we will be right back.
Greta Zimmer Friedman was born in Austria and came to New York City in 1939, escaping the Nazi Holocaust. She volunteered as an air raid warden on our aunt's street and later worked as a dental assistant. On August 14, 1945, Greta took her lunch break and walked to Times Square, where she found everyone celebrating the end of World War II. A sailor passed by, grabbed her, and kissed her. Life photographer Alfred Eisenstadt snapped her picture, and the rest is history.
Welcome back. We are here with Jeanne Cooper. She's also responsible for this program. Welcome to the teen scene. So, how was your experience today?
What a rewarding experience to see these World War II veterans and Rosie the Riveters coming in, smiles on their faces, and to have them as our focal point was just amazing. As the Marine said, who went to the meeting the other day, no one paid any attention to her, no one recognized her. She came here and she was a star. And this is why we're here today, because these women deserve all the praise and all the encouragement that we can give them for what they've done. And we're just so happy to be able to do that.
Okay, now just ask her for her advice.
So, any advice for our teens?
My advice would be to read, whether it's reading books about the World War II women, whether it's reading on the internet. You can type in any of these women's names from the WASP, or type in Rosie the Riveter, and find out just what they did for our country. When the call was made, they came to the call, they accepted the challenges, they were brave, they were courageous, and we honored them for that.
Bednikov, and my maiden name was Gartman. I'm from a family of 12 children, and we lived in the country, Fairford, Alabama. Then I had a chance to go visit my elder sister, who was working at the World's Fair in San Francisco. And when I got out there, she was working as a riveter at the shipyard, and all her friends were so active in war projects that I became very patriotic. Oh, it's everywhere. It was everywhere. It was on every poster. I was in high school at the time, and I would have been in the waves earlier, but I didn't graduate from high school till 42. And I went to California thinking I would go to school at Berkeley and live with my sister. But, oh, I don't know, I just decided I had to do something for the war effort. Everybody in the Bay Streets, the Washington Monument. Oh my God, there's just people. Everybody came out of the Pentagon, out of the buildings, everywhere, and were in the streets and so forth when D-Day hit.
Oh, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So, how did you enjoy today's experience?
Today was an incredible event because it was such a treat to get to meet women who had, these experiences during World War II. They really did open up the doors for us to do things later on in an incredible way. So it was really an honor to meet these women. It's really and fabulous that I had the opportunity to do that. So because they aren't going to be around for very much longer.
Right. So what are you going to take from this experience to someone else as far as giving advice from what you learned here today?
So, I mean, the thing I learned today, I had a chance to talk to a WASP, and I had a question about parachutes, because when the first female astronauts got down to Houston and started flying in T-38s, they figured out that the parachutes were too large for us and we go up instead of down. And so they started actually manufacturing smaller parachute canopies for us. And so I had a chance to talk, and no, they didn't have smaller canopies. So, they really did a lot of things that were extremely dangerous, and even without, equipment. So these are brave women.
Yes, they are. Very brave. Any last thoughts for today?
Well, this program today is an example for me about the Women's Heritage Center and why it's so important to have something like this, and how lucky we are in Maryland to have something like this.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Miss Mary, for joining us today, and I'm glad you had a great experience. And I wish you the best in anything else you decide to do.
Thank you.
Thank
I'd like to say hello. We have a lot of interesting things going on when it comes to careers in science, technology, engineering, and math, and it's really exciting to be able to share some of them with you. This is a very exciting career for kids, any kid, but in particular we'd like to encourage girls to think about being an engineer or a scientist, because it's really a fun career. I worked for over 30 years as an engineer, and I can't think of anything I could do that would have been more fun than what I did, and what I'm still doing, in fact. So it's really a great thing to consider. So I'm going to show you some clips. Come on with me on the trip.
That was one of the crew pictures we took that kind of said what everybody was going to do on the mission.
Being led out really by mission specialist Norm Thagard, Mark Lee, Mary Cleve, and the commander and pilot, Commander Dave Walker waving, and pilot Ron Graby waving. T-minus 15, 14, 13, and liftoff.
1,000 feet per second. Atlantic 2 miles downrange.
Brewster and Brian and Murray in the flight deck. They're preparing for the first of the 2 spacewalks. Three of us, Murray, Woody and myself, dubbed ourselves the Ace Construction Company with the supporting crew of the rest of the crew, and we put up our advertisement after we'd completed the construction of the first access truss.
The arm flies wonderfully. It's just such a great tool. Real smooth, and no surprises. Being able to interact with them, and they gave me some real good directions while we were up there.
So, Bill Harmon, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great.
Good.
So can you tell me a little bit about your experience and what you took from today?
Well, I always enjoy being with my mom at events like this because she's truly a role model for young women in particular, but young people in general. And her life experiences and the way she raised me and my 2 sisters and my brother, she just was someone to look up to, especially given that she lost her husband when I was very young, and she had a young family to raise, and she never remarried, and The skills that she learned as a WASP and an aviator taught her the independence to and have the fortitude raising young children as a single parent. So, but today's event, what a wonderful event, what a wonderful turnout, what a wonderful group of role models, not just my mom, from all different branches of the military. It was just really unique in that perspective. I've often escorted her to air shows and where it's just the WASP that are focused on, and in this case it's women from all walks of life. Rosie the Riveter, the Wax, the Waves. We had a female Marine from World War II. Really a lot of women to truly hold in high esteem.
This picture behind you, I was told that this is your mother?
Right here. That's
All
Mom.
right. Okay.
Yeah. Her grandchildren call her Gammy, and more hip way they refer to as the Gamster. So,
right.
She has 13 grandchildren, and they look up to her as well as her own children. But it was a friend of mine who has a business here in downtown that first discovered her picture on the wall, and Lynn Brick, she texted to me this picture. So it was another reason for me to come today, just to see my mom being honored and to see what the Women's Heritage Museum is all about.
Any last thoughts?
Well, my mom, in terms of thoughts, I hold her in my prayers. She's been battling breast cancer, and that's begun to spread, so each day is a treasure to be with her, and another reason for being here today. And I'm going to spend the next few days with her, and hopefully she'll join me. She was at a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Air and Space Museum at Dulles Airport when that extension of the Air and Space Museum opened, and we've been invited back on Monday, so hopefully I'll be able to escort her to that and be able to enjoy another day with her. Each day is a treasure.
Okay. So do you have any advice for our teens out here?
Well, my mom has a very appropriate saying that she's used many times. In fact, when she's asked for her autograph and she signs books, she writes in there, "Carpe diem." So I think Carpe diem would be good advice from a Maryland heroine to Maryland's youth of today.
All right. Well, thank you for joining our show today.
I was stationed at Las Vegas at Dulles Air Force Base, and there my job was simply to take pilots up. I was the first pilot. I took the plane up and I landed it. And while we were up in the air, the pilot went under the hood and couldn't see where he was flying, when he was practicing instrument flying, and I just had to make sure we didn't run into Charles Mountain or any other area.
Welcome back. We're here with Grandma Edna.
Yeah.
How are you today?
I'm terrific.
Great. So can you just tell the teens here a little bit about yourself and the experience that you had from today's program?
Well, in Baltimore, I'm known as the Sacred Griot. I'm part of the inductees at the Maryland Women's Heritage Center as an unsung hero. And today, I thought being a griot and you're telling a story, you're transferring history, today was phenomenal to have the elders still standing on the earth to leave the story and have it witnessed. This is what I teach, the witnessing of our story. And today, it was phenomenal because everyone here personally got a piece of that. You felt like that niece, that daughter, that grandchild, that son, you felt like that family, and that's what is so important. History is legal documentation to say yes, yes, this occurred, and that was fantastic today.
Okay. So, as far as advice, do you have any advice for our teens?
Oh yes, I work with young people. So I'm gonna have to plug my Spirit in Motion Freedom students. But I really think when the young people came in today, I was impressed because it's all about, I teach that we must go backwards to progress forward. So I'm the backward issue, y'all the forward process. So to have young people like you to do this is phenomenal. I like that word. Is to come in and have young people just be here. Because see, it's a generational thing for really. Because they're going to grow up. They're going to say, remember in 2012, we was in the Maryland Women Heritage Center, and then their children are going to say, my father or my mother was a part of this big, phenomenal event celebrating World War II women. And they was talking about the conflicts and the battles and the deployment. Like they was going in the kitchen to get a cup of coffee or some tea. And I'm sitting back there seeing the planes fly over vividly, hearing the shell cases blowing up, people jumping in foxholes, and they talking about it like they was just had a night out. So and I hope y'all got that. That's important for y'all. And I just, like we was talking a few seconds ago, a lot of elders don't get to tell their story. The families don't hear their story, but just thank for this phenomenal place here, the Maryland Women Heritage Center. And I'm going to put a slash and say museum, because the contents in here is museum quality. So, and today, we all witness to stories that some children hadn't heard. Some people hadn't heard. And the elders got to tell a story. That's what good books are written from. You know, Eleanor Roosevelt, if somebody hadn't listened to her story, she would have never had a good book written, because it would have been all about her husband. You know, so at a point of peace, at a point of coming together, we have to sit down and break that bread of communication. Break it and say, this was this old lady that told her story. And I was impressed by the lady that was in the chair. It was just phenomenal. And then to have it come out telling their story, to fit his story, to build it to our story. This is what this museum is about. Coming and getting the regular, everyday people. And you notice that the women in this room, they weren't dolled up. They didn't have security bringing them in. They didn't have cameras, flashlights. We had this beautiful sister here doing the work. But I'm just saying, they came in as regular, everyday, the next door neighbor person. I live in Silver Springs. I live in Lowell. And they came into this beautiful facility to leave their roots. We're going to keep that table with that display on it for a month. We're going to invite school tours to come in while we have it here, just like we did the stem cell. Every exhibit that goes on in this center/museum is going to be open to the educational system of Maryland.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate all your information, and I'm sure our teens do as well. And I wish you the best in your movement, and thank you all for joining us, and we'll be right back.
My maiden name, Dorothy Louise Anderson, and my married name is Dorothy L. McDowell. We were very poor. I didn't know it. I had a wonderful childhood because my parents were so great. And I wanted to go to college when I graduated out of high school, but couldn't afford to go to college. So I went to work I went to Salem and stayed with my friend there. And that's why I signed up for the Navy at Salem, Oregon, because that's where I lived. Well, they have big posters all over, you know, and of course there was a recruiting office in Salem, so I trotted right down there to hear all about it, because, as I told you, I always wanted to be a sailor. I was very unhappy because I was a girl and couldn't join the Navy, because I would have joined the Navy as soon as I could after getting out of high school. Went to New York to the Bronx to Hunter College. Being from a small high school, this was a small base. And I worked under an officer who treated you like an equal, and you were treated like an equal. We had our own, in mess hall, we had our own tables, but we stood in line right with the fellas, which I appreciated that, because we were in it just like they were. Farmers always wore bib overalls. Mm-hmm. My dad put his fingers under his suspenders and said, "Well, let me tell you about my daughter." and they were very proud of me joining the Navy after I joined.
Welcome back. I have Miss Lindy. I'm sorry. Right. Welcome back. I have Miss Linda Lindsay with us today, and this is her program. So, what did you think about it? How did it go?
Well, the purpose of our program was to recognize, honor, and appreciate women who either were in the service or did some help on the home front during World War II. Mm-hmm. It's very important to recognize these women and their contribution to our country at that time. And time is moving on, and many of the people who participated in World War II era are leaving us. And so we wanted to make sure that we got their stories, told their stories, archived them, and had a venue where people could meet these women and understand exactly the huge contribution that they made to the war effort. Right. We think the program went very well. We had over 100 people here, and people were just, what made the program was the women. Mm-hmm. The women who either worked as Rosie the Riveter or in the Red Cross, or who were in one of the service branches, and telling their experiences and learning about the history of the women of that time. I think we accomplished our goal.
Okay. So do you have any advice for our teens that are watching as far as business-wise?
Well, I don't know about business-wise, but as far as this kind of a topic, which really deals with history, women's history for centuries really wasn't taught. People didn't know what women did because you would read the history books and you'd learn mostly what the men did. Mm-hmm. And so people thought women didn't do anything, mm-hmm. and that's never been the case. And so my advice to young people is to find out about history. Even some people think history is boring. But if you learn the personal stories of someone that you can identify with, so if you're a young woman and you learn a story of a young woman who was about your age or had similar experiences, that'll help you understand exactly what was going on at that period of time, and it keeps it from being boring. So study history, find out what your history is, find out what your family's history is. And a lot of people go into that as a business then, they study and they choose careers that will continue that.
All right. Well, thank you, Miss Lindsay, for putting this program together and for joining our show today. And thank you all for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed the experience, and we will see you next time.
Okay. Oh.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to the episode of Teen Scene. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Until next time, have a good one.